It's past the top of the hour. I think it might be best to start, and as others come on, we'll continue to carry on with the conversation. So, good morning. As you know, my name is George Beitner, 26, 27 years in the business, and this is a series that we do every 2 weeks. The art and science of pricing signs. There's a few others that have been recorded before now, and those are in the library as well. So you're welcome to jump on board and listen to those. Hi, Sheree. This morning's guest is Pete Jackson. Pete came and visited me 13, I think, plus years or so ago, interested in sign world. He opened up his business south of us, closer to San Diego. The name of his company is Sign Distinction, and Pete's going to share with us one of his particular projects that he's been involved with for some time now. And Pete, if you want to go ahead and take it away and share a little bit about how you came across this particular project, how you were able to quote it, what you used for a markup, margins, if you will, and where it is today. And as we move forward, I think that some of our people online here, they might want to go ahead and ask some questions as we go through. So it's kind of interactive. And then on top of that, maybe they'll even have a project to share with us that we can talk about and help them price that as well. Okay, so with that, Pete, here's your introduction. Let's go.
Good morning, everybody. From the start, I was impressed with Sign World because of the connections you can make. And I call George the Godfather because he was one of my first connections, and it led to a number of other good things. And kind of took that lesson. I came into this business without a clue, literally, and I got in at a last minute thing where I was headed in one direction and a deal fell apart, and the business I was working in was closing down, and I needed to do something. And the guy I was working with, one of these brokers, said, "Have you ever thought about the sign business?" And I said, "Well, not really, but I had been in commercial real estate and knew the value of signs, and I just jumped in." And I met George, and he's been real helpful, as I'm sure you've been made aware. But when I first got in, and it all has to do with what George is talking about, I tried to figure out how I could make the most of connections that I made along the way. And not knowing anything about signs, I just reached back into my background, which had a lot of sports background and commercial real estate. And I did two things right off the bat that led to the project that George is talking about. I knew that I wanted to start this business and have a portion of it be a giving back, so find a way to give back to the community. And being in the military for a little bit and having a lot of connections that had been in there for years, I reached out to people with the Wounded Warrior Project and some others. And long story short, a group, a colonel from West Point, called me up and said, "Hey, I'm flying out to San Diego with some cadets from the West Point triathlon team to compete in a triathlon, and they're spending their own money to come out there and to support a group called Team Red, White, and Blue." And they needed help finding a place to the kids to stay and feed them, and I did that and got to know these people. And from here on out, this is how my business has developed. They came out, and we had I had a connection at one of the TV stations come out and do a story on them. And after they came out and did this report, they went out to dinner with us, hit it off with the cadets, and we had a good time. The cadets got some media over the weekend in this a triathlon that they competed in. And a week later, a girl who was there, a young lady who was there as an intern with the television station, called me up and said, "Hey, my mother's involved with a new half marathon in town. Would you like to get involved with that?" And I said, yes. So all of a sudden now I got involved with this Team Red, White, and Blue, which was just growing. And within about 3 weeks, I was now going to be providing all the signage for the San Diego Half Marathon. Um, as that progressed, at about the same time, I ended up like within 3 or 4 months, just using connections, I became a national sign provider for Team Red, White, and Blue. The created we had about a $26,000 job right off the bat for this half marathon, and at the same time, all these things coincided where I could use some of these old relationships, and we ended up doing the very first game that was college basketball game that was played on an aircraft carrier here in San Diego. North Carolina played Michigan State on the flight deck of the USS Carl Vinson, which at the time had just become well known for that was the ship that took Osama bin Laden's body out to sea and got rid of that. And on board during this game, the president of the United States was at the game, and it was a nationally televised game, and just from using old contacts and things like that, within about 6 months, we had done some major work that got us some credibility. And I'm kind of telling you all this because I feel like I've just been very fortunate and made the right connections at the right time. But in the back of my mind, all of it had to do, I think, is by reaching out to others and trying to figure out a way to help. And it's become a big part of our business with this Team Red, White, and Blue, and also with the San Diego Half Marathon. George asked about pricing, and as anybody just being new into this business, I had no clue. But Sirius has everything set up for you, and we found out early on that maybe the pricing in Sirius may not be. You need to adapt depending on the part of the country you're in. Some of the markups and the responses we're getting to prices I did directly out of Sirius were too high for San Diego anyway. For a new business trying to be competitive, I had to get some guidance from people like George and others along the way to make adjustments. And I think you'll find that wherever you are, you're going to have to adapt to the pricing in your area and use that along with any sales skills and other relationships you have to get work. The first jobs we got were outsourced work, especially at the point in time that we were just starting with Team Red, White, and Blue. It's all trade show type things, canopies, feather banners, things like that. Nothing that we were going to produce here. So we just got advice from everybody on that sort of thing. But other things that took place right to start off with the games on the aircraft carriers. Those were all things we were producing, but we had a little bit of an edge because I tried to figure out how I could use some of the things I had heard at Sign World training, and then the relationships I had with people. The organizers of the game that was on the aircraft carrier, they were looking to provide entertainment for the troops. Really, it was all about the military. So I went to them and asked them how I can get involved with maybe using connections from Team Red, White, and Blue. They needed volunteers on the ship for that game. They were open to that. A guy that trained us at Sign World just made a side comment to me one day saying, "Hey, you're right next to HP headquarters. You're using an HP printer. There are times when they'll provide sample rolls of things to guys like you to try out, and you show them the results and that sort of thing." So I was looking to try to get this job with the aircraft carrier, and I went up to HP and I said, "Hey, we have an opportunity for this. Is there any way you can help me out with materials?" And I kind of did a trade-off with the organizer saying, "Hey, if I can get some pricing discounted by getting vinyl provided from HP, can you give them some advertising?" And it was like nothing could have worked out better. HP got their sign up on a big scoreboard on top of the ship. We got our name on the scoreboard on top of the ship. HP provided materials for us, which didn't show up on time, so they shipped us again another 60 rolls of vinyl. Um, we got that, used it for the job, and 2 days after the event, the original shipment came in, and they said, "We'll just keep it. We're really happy with what happened there." So we had the first year and a half of trying to figure out pricing by using free materials, banner materials. George's probably not going to want to hear that, but
That's okay. That's the way
I
it
guess what
works.
I'm saying is my story is kind of different than a lot of other people. I had some big breaks up front. I had a lot of help from others and still do. And I don't know.
We,
There's a lot more to it. But George, go ahead.
no, the points you're making are good. We talk about that all the time with relationships, people people you can reach out to, and it's amazing too. Uh, the people that you do talk about your business, what you're doing, they may not need signs, but they're going to go ahead and refer you because they're in a conversation at a dinner party or whatever. And it has a lot to do with the personality of the individual and how they come across and willing to work on something and make that extra effort. With your involvement with Red, White, and Blue, can you provide specifically, because I think the biggest question new owners have is, if I buy it for X, what do I sell it for? Do I double it? Do I increase it by 40%? Do I add $1 to it? What did you do, for example, if you can share that with us specifically, if there's a package that you have outsourced that has a canopy, a table throw, some pull-up banners. It's something that I think your client, Red, White, and Blue, even to this day, will send in an order. It's almost like a repeat job. The artwork's all done. You don't have to redo that again. We talk about that too, that where you're going to make your money is on your repeat business, multiples. It's the one-offs that you can hardly ever charge enough to make up for the margins that you want to have and the competition. So you're dealing with a corporate account as opposed to private. Is that correct?
Yeah, and also a nonprofit. And it was a start. It was at the beginning. I opened in 2011, and they began organizing in, I want to say, in the summer of 2010. So they're 6, 7 months into it. They were in 2 or 3 cities, and had a couple hundred people, and they're all just friends of friends. But I liked what they were doing. I mean, I could see real value in it's a veteran support organization that, to cut to the chase, there's something like 60% of guys transitioning out of the military don't go back to their hometowns. So there's a chance that once they get out, that they're in areas where maybe they don't have friends or connections. They were fit when they were in the military, were a part of a team. And what Team Red, White, and Blue does is provide a calendar of events where they can get together with other veterans or people in the community and have team workouts. Hike on the up in the mountains, work out on the beach, CrossFit, and all these different things. And they'll have 4 or 5 things a week that these guys can join in on, and it's free. And it grew from that 2 or 3 chapters back then. Now, 11, 12 years later, they're in close to 300 cities. close over 200,000 or 300,000 members. Microsoft has been involved, Google has been involved, sponsoring different things that they do, really big name groups. But the whole thing back from the start has been was grassroots. So anyway, to your point, it's an organization that I felt had value. I knew the potential for growth because of the people that were involved with it. And I wanted to be able to provide signs for them and knowing that it was going to grow, and it grew beyond my imagination. So there was a package that each one wanted that was a canopy, a table throw, and a falcon flag. I get from WS Display, who's a sign world provider and one of the owners. And I would double them, but then I would show, I forget, I think it was a 10% discount just because of who I was dealing with. And I didn't want, I was a big part because we were putting on events for them here. But I wanted to show them that, I was trying to do something for them by discounting somewhat. But over the years, I mean, the first 3 or 4 years, they were my biggest client. Those packages were, I want to say, $2,000 or $3,000 each times, 300. It grew, but I mean, I had multiple orders the first couple of years that were like 10,000, 15,000, 17,000, where I was shipping out to, I don't know, whatever, 10 different chapters. So all those things kind of played into pricing there, that knowing it wasn't a big corporate thing that had a lot of money, knowing that there was a lot of potential for growth, and there were sponsors that were coming on board, and my desire to be a part of the group and the organization and help them out in some way, even though it kind of, obviously it benefited us, but it was not my intent going in.
So can you tell us too then, how did you decide what to charge for that? Was it something you heard from another owner that you just double it? Or did you test the market to see what others might be willing to pay, or did they show their hand? How do you, I guess the question here more than anything else is everybody wants to know is, how do you decide that a 40% markup is just not sufficient? Besides throwing a dart at the wall and picking a number out of your hat, there was a sweet spot that you knew, because the side of, you want to give back, you want to give them a discount, that sort of thing.
Right.
And you could probably mark up higher to get the discount as well. But not to put words in your mouth, what did you do to arrive at that price point?
Well, all those things. It was early on, and I was, I asked you, I probably asked you at one time, what do you do? And everybody was pretty much, double it. And they weren't reaching out. They weren't saying, you got to match this, you got to do this, because in effect, I was the director of community relations for them here. It wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
It became big, but initially it was just that, and then it got to a point where I had it all set up with the artwork was saved with WS Display.
Right.
All I was doing was taking a number and giving it to WS Display, and so I found two things were happening. I found value in doing this for them, and then it was also part of what I was doing as an organization here. I've told you about it, we were sponsoring and organizing events for them here. And I was using that, social media became a big factor in all this from the start. Being able to have a presence and being able to have meaningful things to share that we've done. We noticed almost immediately the number of visitors to our website, and how that affected us. So I guess what I'm saying is there was value coming in from this relationship and what we were doing. And so double it was what I was hearing. If I was along the way making good money on these things, and without a lot of effort on our part.
Right.
And then I felt there was value in giving back the discount. Um, so
And did this, with working with this particular group, did this lead to other work, as you mentioned, it did through social media, but from these organizations and who they had contacts with throughout the United States, did they also have other projects that came up that you weren't even aware of, or was that basically just a package?
Going back to that first visit where the girl from the TV station calls me 2 weeks later and asks me about this half marathon, and really the reason this whole thing came about was because of Team Red, White, and Blue, but this kind of is the web that happens in some cases. So we took on this half marathon only to find out that it was the result of an initiative a very big, large church in San Diego had put out to their congregation, basically the Rock Church, which has 7 different churches here. They're all around San Diego and very large, as you know. They had asked their church to find ways to give back to the community. This young couple who started they were runners, and both had worked for Qualcomm, made a lot of money, and retired young. They wanted to do something, and so they thought, well, let's put on this half marathon. And the purpose of one of the things they did as a mission was to create ways to give back to the community, and then bring in fundraising. Charitable organizations could be targeted with fundraising through the half marathon. But one of the things they did was they got ideas from the 7 county supervisors of a need in their area, and then they would give the funds back to those needs. Like one was build a new dugouts and restrooms at a Little League in a disadvantaged area of San Diego. Those are the kind of things that they were doing. And so we got into this half marathon. Next thing you know, the Rock Church is calling us, and we're doing all of their signage.
Sure.
So things have spread out, and the more visibility we've had in the community, the more business that's come in from it, and then you get more comfortable about pricing because people are calling you. Bless you, George.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Pete, just initially about the particular project he's referring to, that maybe we haven't touched upon at this time? Nothing. Okay. Is there anyone that has a particular project that they're working on right now that they want to share, that they have questions about, that maybe we can help price for them?
I wanted to share a learning from a loss,
Okay.
because it was super interesting. So I'm in Boston, and the Boston market is expensive because of cost of living is super high here, which is very similar to San Diego and other major metros.
Right.
And I took the doubling as the first approach of just saying, here's how much it is. Here's how much it's going to cost me. I'm going to sell it for this amount, and lost it because it was too expensive, which was fine because it was a good learning. But what I learned was, I don't think doubling works for everything in the Boston area. I think it has to be very strategic in terms of like, and I'm still experimenting, so I'd love feedback from the more tenured people, but I'm going to double the lower cost items and only, I don't know what, multiplier to apply to the higher cost items.
And that's a really, really good point. And I think Pete can share that. Even today, being in the business for 13 years already, there's projects that he's not getting because he's priced his product too high. and not knowing what the competition is looking for, or but I think it has more to do too with regards to I know I'll simplify it, but a sign is a sign is a sign. But in many cases, they're buying it because of you. They're buying this, and Pete made a really good example of this. I mean, they weren't even out shopping him for this particular project because of what he was engaged with, how he's going to be involved with it. And he's a fellow Rotarian, and I think that helps with regards to being involved in the community in some way and getting those kinds of projects. But it is a sensitive element to find out, okay, where do I make $100 on this job, or do I make $1,000 on this job? And it's to try to determine exactly, not specifically, because you don't always know. In your case, Matthias, you may and maybe you do know who you lost it to and for how much it is, but you need to learn that market in your area to understand what that market will bear. If you're going to, you don't want to be the lowest price in town. You don't want to be the highest. You want to be in the mid-range, but you also want to be able to provide, I think, exceptional service. You're answering the phone, you're going to see the customer, you're talking to the clients, you're making that extra effort. Pete's working right now with a couple of his employees to help them along with not only providing positive estimates, but to have a system in place to be able to follow up on those estimates, to see where they are, what's going on, what questions I need to ask to be able to close the deal. Because you don't want to just leave them be an estimate company and just continue to provide estimates to everybody all the time and hope one or two finally hits. You need to have a good process in place, a good procedure, from the standpoint of not only answering the phone at a certain time, but how and when to follow up and what to say when you follow up. So that was a good example, Matthias. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have one they want to bring up at this time that they have that?
We have one that we're doing. It's a metal sign. It's 3x5. It's backlit. It's an interior sign for a very upscale therapist in the area that has multiple therapists that work underneath her. And the vendor price is $6,000. Like it was actually a lot more than we expected the price to be, because it's a very intricate, her design is very detailed and got a lot of cuts and turns in it. So apparently it costs more.
Okay. Now, with that, let's say you're on the other end of this. How do you know that's a fair price that you're getting? You can assume that who you're dealing with, the wholesale dealer that you're working with, is giving you the best price, and everything's negotiable. So you might be able to even bring them down a little bit. But what I like to do too is I like to have 2 or 3 different vendors that I use and continue to work with as time went on, improving my vendors. Because even though I think I've got a really great guy at this particular time building my signs for me, through the grapevine, either talking to other owners or just reaching out to other companies, all of a sudden I find someone who's got better capabilities. They're willing to do wholesale work as well as retail work, or they're just a wholesaler. There's a lot of these other elements that come into play. So your particular sign that you have there, for me, I would say, is this really a good price? Now, maybe being in the business long enough and understanding maybe what square feet usually people charge or upright inch for a channel letter might be into play, or other things that you learn over time. You might find that, yeah, that's really a fair price. But without having that other knowledge and understanding of the rest of the world around you, and new vendors and suppliers and installers, I don't want to say pop up all the time, but they do, because they understand this business. I was at a dinner meeting the other night and I met an individual and I passed this information on to Pete because he's just south of me. And there's issues sometimes with installers. You have a nice electrical sign that needs that you don't have a truck for, you have ladders for, you don't even have anybody capable of doing. But this particular company only does installs, and they'll provide you a quote for doing that project for you. Now you have a base number that you think might be fair. And if you have another installer that you've used before and you've got their number, I don't want to say you want to pit them against each other, but now you can say, well, I got another guy who can do it for this. Can you do it for that too? And yeah, I'm willing to do that as well. And then you can increase your margin a bit on that particular job because you understand what the going rate is in the area. So let's say, getting back to your project at $6,000, to double it to 12 grand, your customer might just run for the hills. You know, that might be just way too much money. But if you want to make the sale and they know somebody who knows somebody and they bring you up they were so helpful and they did that, so whatever it might be, and you just mark it up 25%, that's better than no percent. And you've learned from a supplier and a vendor. There's all this stuff that takes time to learn about. So you've got all these different, pieces and parts you can bring into your business that you weren't able to do before. I think it's much better than just not. Now, if you have a customer that says, you know what, I can get it for $5 grand, and you're at $7 grand because you just wanted to mark it up $1,000, right? You're like, I can't even touch it for $5. I can't even buy it for $5, let alone mark it up. So there's other things that happen as well in your area where you think you're getting a wholesale price, but you're really getting the retail price. You want to add to that at all, Pete?
Yeah, it's kind of a question for you because I think a key to helping whether or not you get that job is to communicate to maybe you were the first to speak with that client. I don't know, but ask them if they come back and say they got a better price. Ask them if they can share it with you. Maybe you're not talking apples to apples. You can come back and get a better price. But I think the key is to continue the relationship with the client. Get as much information from them up front. What's their budget, and get an idea in mind about whether or not, if up front their budget's 4,000, you get a price for 6,000. We better go shopping or maybe do something to
redesign the sign differently,
change their mindset. But then,
So do you have anyone that you would recommend us asking for a quote from, like a different supplier? Because I'm not going to say that we're going down the preferred vendor list, but I'm feeling like sometimes when I go down the preferred vendor list, it's like the you want to pay retail list.
Yeah.
and it could be.
Yeah.
It could be. Yeah. And so even though we have a preferred, SignWorld has a preferred vendor list, doesn't mean that you need to even be using them. I mean, they might be, helpful in many ways, but locally, what we had found, and I'll let Pete share, and some of you could share with this as well. But locally, we had found that a lot of things that we were trying to bring house and do ourselves, we could find outside sources that had really good wholesale prices, and we didn't have to worry about building it, constructing it, getting the UL label, whatever it might be. And so that allowed us to keep our overhead lower because we're not hiring more and more people and buying more and more equipment that has to be maintained and to train individuals on. And so by resourcing that out and around you, now you're able to save yourself some money, make additional money, and you become and I don't know what Pete's shop is at this particular time, but you become a shop that might be a 60-40, 60% of the work you do in-house, 40% goes outside. So there may be, and depending on how long you've been in around your area, there may be quite a few sources that are around you. They might be a half hour away, they could be 45 minutes away, or maybe even an hour away. But these individuals, and it could be other SignWorld owners, by reaching out to them, and Pete could probably share this as well. When you first start out, you don't really know much. So you start to reach out to the SignWorld owners and ask them, where would you go to get this, or how would you find that? Right, Pete?
Yep, exactly. I think you can find more in your local area. That, for one, even right off the bat, you're saving on shipping, which can be a big factor in a larger sign. And there are, here anyway in San Diego, there's a number of wholesale, the guys that are wholesale only, locally. They're not just SignWorld people. you want to try to go there because the relationship is as often as not, but, George and I both, I think, have people locally here, and one guy is a sign world guy that buy from, local wholesalers as opposed to somebody on that list.
Pete, I have a question for you. When you started, how many quotes did you provide to your prospects? So because using different materials, the project could be cheaper or more expensive. How many quotes do you provide? Would you recommend to provide multiple quotes to win the deal?
Do you understand that question, Pete? Basically is, all right, so there's, one of the things that you can do as a strategy is you can provide a quote for a customer that is the best, mid-range, and then the least expensive. Is that what you're saying, Lana?
Yeah, so I could provide multiple quotes, for example, for letters. So, and
Options.
more expensive material and less expensive material, but
Right.
achieve the same results. Because as I understand, it's not about price. It's about budget. If
Mhm.
you don't know the budget, how you could price?
Right.
Yeah, we try to get as much information up front from the client. Now, a lot of them, and you can kind of tell right off the bat who's just price shopping, and honestly, we almost try to stay away from people that are just saying, "Hey, I got a quote for this. Can you beat it?" Because more often than not, it's not the kind of client you want, because they're going to take the same thing and go back to the original person probably. But clients that are contacting you maybe for the first time or off of your website, if you can get a feel for budget, sometimes they don't want to share it because they're afraid to say that you're going to give them a price that fits the top line of that budget.
Showing their hand.
Yeah, but I don't know. For a while we would say, okay, here's options, just like you said, and get their feedback. Most likely they want the highest quality project for the lowest quality, lowest price. But you gotta kind of work with them on that and sell your ability, your customer service, we tried to make a point as often as not to go out and meet with them rather than just take the phone call. See if we could come out and do a survey and talk to them that way. But I don't know. I
Well-
found that our best success was being the first there.
As a consumer, as you even being a consumer, you're going to some degree, you're going to do some price shopping to make sure whatever you're getting is fair. What we had found over the years is, and I may have mentioned this earlier, is we found there was more money to be made, more profitable in corporate than there was in private. So if you're dealing with a restaurant and they've spent all the money to get things up and running, they put all the tables and chairs in, they've got their kitchen done, they've got their people that they've hired and trained, and they, oh my gosh, we forgot we need a sign. And then they would call us and they would say, we need a sign, but we don't have any money. Well, then I don't want to do any business with you because I'm going to go through a lot of effort, and they may contact 3 or 4 or 5 other sign companies to do the same thing. And now there's a competition that they may even reach out and say, we're going to do a design competition, and whoever has the best design, we're going to go with that company. Well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time providing free design work. I don't want to play that game, and there are others that might. Now there is a strategy that you could use if you were to, and I think Tim was talking about that in one of our last sessions, where he would go meet the customer, he'd introduce himself, he would charm them with his personality, do everything he could to get them to buy from him. And because others won't do it, they'll ask for, well, just send me a picture of your building. Can you take a piece of paper outside and tape it on the wall so I have something to to try to design something for you. And I'll give you a rough quote of what it might be, because they understand that if they go out and spend the time, go back and create a design, come back and show it to the customer, that they could be just one of three. And for whatever reason, they might not want to even deal with you, even if your pricing is better. So that's a difficult game to play. And our company leaned more towards new construction. It's not an easy industry to be in, but it was very profitable because of the size of the project and the multiples that were in the building. It wasn't just one sign, it was 350 signs. It wasn't just a few wayfinding signs. It included all of them in the entire project. Now, there's a lot of project management that's involved with that. So you need to know your numbers to make sure when it's all said and done, you've done a good job of not only quoting the project, but measuring what you have done. And this is something else that's really important. If you don't measure the jobs that you're doing now to see if you quoted them for a certain dollar amount, let's say, in your case for the $6,000 sign, you paid $6,000 for it. You paid whoever else $500 to install it. You charged $7,500, and you expected to make $1,000, but you spent 4 or 5 hours on the entire project, or maybe more, doing the design work, negotiating with the customer. All of this time is costly. So at the end of it, you have to account for that as well, and then determine how much should I actually really make on this, because you didn't make $1,000. Maybe when you're all said and done, you made $400 or $500 because of all the other costs that were involved. So that's that you don't have to do it with every job, but I think it's important to take a project by project basis and just examine it to see where you stand with what you put into it, taking into account for all the line items that are a part of it, and to see what's really left over. Because there's one other thing too to remember. Your employees that are working for you will find out that you sold this job for $7,500. In their mind, they say, wow, we just sold $7,500 worth of signs. Boss is making a lot of money. Well, let's talk about what it really cost us. We spent $6,000 for this. We spent $500 for that. We spent another $500 for design work and project management and multiple trips out to the job. So really, boss really made about $300 or $400. So understand that keeping your employees engaged and involved with understanding what the costs are and what time it takes to do a project is just as important as you winning a job and making sure that when it's all said and done, you made money and you made the right amount of money. So with all of that being said, it's time now to take a look at any project that comes up and ask yourself, is this worth the time and effort for me to even try to do this job? Because why did they call me? And I'm pretty new at what I'm doing anyway. Maybe they don't know that. But why did they call me? It's because the other sign company is saying, you know what? That sign you want on the wall for that you think is $6,000, it's really a $10,000 sign. And they're looking for their best price, and they're hoping somebody's going, because they're a consumer and they're buying these one-offs. I talk about interior lobby signs, and there's a lot of sign world owners that are very successful on putting in these nice cut letters that are behind the front lobby, the receptionist, and some of them can be really elaborate and beautiful, and they're pieces of art. But when you know an artist that you're dealing with, and they're doing a picture that you think, I could probably splash some paint on a canvas and it could be worth, thousands of dollars as well. The art is in, the eye of the beholder. And if you don't charge enough for all the work you're doing for that one-off, all the design time, preparing the project, contacting the customer before you come out to install it, making sure that they're going to pay their balance because they gave you the deposit. And then when you get done, they go, well, I don't really like it, so I'm not going to pay you the balance. Now I'm stuck holding that. That's a one-off. But when you're doing something for a college or a municipality or the city that you're in, and there's a maintenance department and it's exciting, right, Pete? When you hear from a customer, they go, I need 50 of these. And you go, Cool. I like 50. I want multiples. I don't. And if you can establish something, and Pete's example today is really good from the standpoint that he's got a repeat customer. He just punches the button to redo that job. Takes the little effort to now reorder another package to send over to Chicago or up to Spokane, Washington, or out there to Boston, because they know where to get this package. The artwork is done. It's in like in a little catalog. You know, you might even have a cover page that looks nice and clean about who assigned distinction is and how their involvement with red, white, and blue is. And it's a digital document, and they check off the box and they say, this is where it needs to ship to. And he contacts his WS Display. They put it together and they ship it to them. He doesn't even see it.
Yeah.
Did you get it? I need the balance that's due. And how fun is that, running that kind of a business, right? So I caution people, unless you really know, I think that, and it has to be almost in your chest that you feel that it's the right place to be, that you are doing something that you know they're going to follow through with you because of what you're providing more than just the price. I think that's what's really important about it. Pete, you got anything else to add to that at all?
No. You covered it all.
Okay. Does anybody else have an example or a question?
I have a question for you, George.
Okay.
Earlier you mentioned about an installation company that does installation only. in this
Yes.
area. Do you know if they happen to work in the Northern California area?
How far are you above San Francisco? No,
I'm in Santa Clara in San Jose area.
Santa Clara. The first thing, the company that I met, and this was through the California Sign Association. So
Okay.
there might be different groups throughout California because they might have a northern one and a southern one. But this company that I met is up in Anaheim, that's north of us in San Diego.
I see.
And they'll go as high as Bakersfield and Fresno, that I think he shared with me. But he has 7 crews, and he takes all that work all that concern out of your hands. I think I passed the information on to Pete.
Yeah.
Because they will come down to San Diego. Now, when Pete reaches out to them, he might find that they're too expensive compared to who he's using now.
Right.
But don't stop looking. And on top of that, Pete has something that comes up. It's a piece of equipment. He needs an installer. It could be, hey, I've got an employee here looking for a job, and it looks like they used to work at another sign world organization. Can I call up that owner and see what they think about it? Use your resources in your organization in Sign World. They will also know people outside Sign World that knows what kind of vendor you might need or what kind of supplier you might need. There's some Sign World owners are a heck of a lot better than I ever was, because Frank, who's in our area here, he knows all the owners in and outside of Sign World. He's pretty much introduced them to every one of them. He does work for a bunch of fast signs, wholesale work. He's engaged in the sign community because this is his business. This is what he does. And so he took a way different approach than I ever did. And we hardly ever ran into each other. And he's right down the street from my company, bidding against one another. As the same as Pete's business, it's just maybe 15, 20 minutes south of where we were located. But we share information with each other. We talk about better practices. We talk about where we find, suppliers. So reach out around you, James, to see who else. The benefit of being in this group of 350 owners throughout the United States and Canada is you've got these resources that are everywhere. You've got groups already that you're working with. And if there's things that come up that you want to talk to me about one-on-one, I'm open for that too. That's fine. There wasn't too much time in between when Pete first started that he wasn't giving me a call and saying, hey, what is it? What does the tape measure look like, George? Where do I get them?
That's the truth. I tell you, just one thing, I found that finding a good installer, if you don't have one, is really it's key almost. It's very beneficial. You got to have somebody that's able to do everything and that you can trust. George George introduced me to the one I still use, and he's probably sorry he did. But
No, not at all. No, because by sharing that information for you, I knew that would help you in your business and growing it. And I think for all of you too, I want to try to help in growing your business and helping you with these questions that you have coming up. And where do I find it? How do I do this? What would you do? And not that I have all the answers. There's a lot of owners that are a lot smarter than I am out there. They've got better practices than I do. They've got better software today. They've got better point of purchase software. They've got newer equipment than what we started with. So you have a bigger advantage. And it's exciting to see these newer owners too accelerate their business faster than I ever was able to do. So there's the information is available, but you have to be willing to ask. There's no dumb question. There really isn't. There's nothing foolish, and to get the information to be able to run with it is really, I think, very, very important. So anyone else have any other questions that we might be able to help with, or that we didn't quite answer all the way? Maybe some clarification because of Pete, you were supposed to do more talking this time, not me.
I told you, I'm not, I just, I'm here for you, George. I would like to share, can I share a screen? We
Yeah,
got a couple minutes left, just take 2 seconds. So
a few minutes.
if you don't mind, write down www.pauljohnson.run. And this goes back to this team red, white, and blue, and something we're doing. Where am I going to find it, George?
On
Right
the
here.
World Wide Web. Is it JOHN? Son?
Can you guys see this?
Yes.
United States.
Can you hear it?
Couldn't have been possible without these guys. Sign distinction down in San Diego. They really did a nice job here. So we got the entire route going all the way from LA to New York. And if you come out, support and run with us, we'd love to have you sign the RV. So we filled up all of Arizona, little light New Mexico, that's okay. And then Texas, I expect you to show up big time. And as we go over, we're going to keep getting these signatures. People from Colorado, we've had some people from Florida, Texas, Nebraska. Thanks, Pete. Yeah, come on out, support the run, get your name on the beautiful RV. Awesome job provided by Sign Distinction.
Very good.
Okay, so what he's doing, he started in LA 2 weeks ago, and he's initially he was trying to break a world record, run cross country, but now he's just doing it. But he's raising $1 million for Team Red, White, and Blue. That's our part of it. And I donated the wrap to. We're noted as a sponsor on the website for that. But on that, it's fun to watch and interesting to follow. On that website I gave you, that pauljohnson.run, you can track where he is every minute of the day, how much he's run, and how much money he's raised. He's raised $200,000 in the last couple of weeks.
Terrific.
And so I'm using that to share with people, and it's obviously self-serving in some ways, but it helps you with your presence, help people just know who you are, and it's become a part of our business. So anyway, thanks for letting me share.
No, that's terrific. And that was a really good example, because what did that wrap actually cost you?
About 5 or 6, actually.
About $5,000 or $6,000 to do that wrap, and you
Yeah.
donated it completely.
Yep.
Okay. And that the cost was both the printing of, how big is that motorhome, by the way? Is it huge?
It's pretty big. I think
Pretty big. All right.
yeah.
So it's like almost like a bus then. And so that it was the cost of the materials and the installation, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did, and this is something you guys can all kind of hang on to, but I reached out to Fellers tried to get them to donate the whole thing for you, but they gave me a buy one, get one deal. I've got to provide them with some photos and a description of how it was helpful to use their new product. But that's twice now with somewhat big jobs or projects that I reached out, once to HP, once out to Fellers. And they're willing to, they're in the same game and they want their name out there too, to be associated with things. So
Mhm.
in both cases, it was beneficial to us to have done so because both of those groups gave back.
Good. Very good. Congratulations on that. That's terrific. And if you haven't all at this particular time joined a community organization, Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions, something along that line, I think those are great organizations to be a part of because you're dealing with other business people. Most of it's giving back to the community in many ways. Over the years, for us, it was something that was terrific because of the friendships that we created and the understanding that you can travel just about anywhere in the world and do a makeup meeting at a Rotary club and be a part of what they're doing. And then getting involved with giving back around the world is such a neat thing in your life. So that's my pitch from that standpoint, if you haven't done that yet. But it's the same thing with the local baseball, Little League. We started out doing soccer banners for the soccer moms, and we decided that we can't do that because it just wasn't, there was any money in that. But we still, friends that had kids that were involved or grandkids that were involved, it goes a long way. And you're not doing it just because you want to get paid back in some way. It's because you can. And in this business that you're in, it's such a you're marketing all the time and you're advertising all the time for other businesses. And that's the key, is to be able to sell that aspect to it, be a part of it. And then you'll be surprised how many jobs that you're going to do that aren't even signs. There might be elements of it, structures to hold signs that you never thought you would be involved with. But it's how you want to use your time and how you want to give back and be involved in it. And Pete, thanks for sharing today. That's a great organization to be a part of, and I want to continued success with that as well.
But thank you. And just like George would always say, I'm available for anytime anybody wants to contact me at pete@signdistinction.com. I'm more than happy to help anybody and talk about it.
Yeah. Any other questions before we close? We're almost to the top of the hour. We have nothing else. Okay. Thank you all for attending today. Thanks, Pete. And get to selling projects, guys. You got work to do. We'll see you later.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, Pete. Bye-bye.